I guess I'll introduce myself. My name is Brad Green. I'm the software product manager for KMC. Today in this breakout, we're going to be talking about KMC Connect. We're going to go over some existing features, some of the new features. We'll talk a little bit about some of the new hardware as it incorporates into some of the software and how you're going to configure it. So how many of you in here, by a show of hands, have worked with KMC Connect for more than, say, 2.5 years? All right, come on up here, because I've only worked with it for 2 years. So, so you guys are going to be my saving grace. If I make mistakes, call me out on it, okay? So I'm going to go through some existing features through Connect, and then I'm going to go through some of the new cool features that we built into it that I think you guys will really like. A lot of them are up on the YouTube channel. So if you want to go look at those, I've made videos on a lot of them. And we're going to talk about the new FlexStat, and we have some presentation on that today, the in-ocean gateway, and then we're also going to talk about, like I said, some of the software features like the code editor and some new stuff that we built into there as well. So just a little bit of who has not worked with KMC Connect at all? Anybody? It's like brand new, never seen it? Okay, well I'm going to skip through some of this real quick, but so it's a multi-panel layout. Obviously, how many of you have not worked with Total Control? Because this screenshot's actually from Total Control. So the only difference is the Site Explorer, right? So Site Explorer for your graphical side is in Total Control. Connect doesn't have that. I'll skip over some of the boring stuff because I made the mistake yesterday spending too much time on slides and we missed all the meat stuff at the end. So just a couple things to point out, so our software forms, oh, they're really hard to see here for you guys. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. The forms themselves, we try to lay them out with chevrons. So we're going to default to one open form, one chevron open, just hit the down arrow to expand a chevron. Some of that stuff, I got some cards up here if you guys want to grab some before you leave or email me. I'd really love to get your feedback on any changes and things that could really help you guys with Connect. So if there's some things that you see like, hey, how come you always open this chevron when nobody ever uses that one or we never use it? So try to get that feedback to me. If you have any more ideas for wizards, you're probably familiar with them, but they're more modal. They pop up in front of the active workspace. You can't really leave that screen. You're going through a configuration, saving, and then dropping back out to your forms. So that's like analog input wizard. And then table views, which are assigned to our group folders like inputs or analog values, binary values, and then a lot of data all in one table. I'm going to talk a little bit about tables, but you guys probably know most of it. Backups. How many of you guys make BACnet backups? Is that pretty common? Okay. What about BNDs? Those two as well, right? KMD guys, any KMD folks in the room? Couple? Few? Okay. So the difference is, you probably already know, but BACnet backups are super fast, right? And they're just copying the files on that device, just the files, and they're a like for like. You're not going to be able to edit them offline, but they are fast. BNDs take a while. So, and it's a complaint. I hear it a lot, and we are doing some investigation on what we can do to strip that out to make it a little bit faster, but as you probably know, we're copying everything from the device over. So each of them has their place when you want to use them for a BACnet backup versus a BND. And as you guys probably know, I got the screenshot here for the BACnet backups are in a different location, but they're not expandable. You can't get down to the objects and make edits. So if you're making a template or you want to take just a piece of some analog value objects and you just want to do a partial restore, you're going to have to use a BND for that. And then KMD, you really only have the one option for KMD. Excuse me. So the other thing that you might have used a little bit, or if not, is the device backup manager. shown over there in the ribbon bar, and that's the scheduled device backups where we added KMD support in this last release, so you can now do KMD scheduled device backups. But the scheduled device backup, just like the name implies, you're going to run it on a schedule and you're going to add your devices that you want to make backups to. Now they're grouped by the backup type, so you can only have KMD devices, and with KMD devices you can only have, and then for BACnet you're going to have to pick which backup type you want. Do you want it to be a BND? Do you want it to be a BACnet backup? The default is the BACnet backup in that pick list in the drop down for setting that up. But you can switch it to BND. Couple things to note is the backup location. So let me maybe bounce over to Connect here and just show you guys real quick. So device backup manager, and in my workspace over here, when you create a new schedule, you can name your job or name your schedule, just call it test. And then you're just going to drag in or select the devices you want. There is an add device button, which is going to come up with an option to do searches on the network. You can wildcard that. You guys have probably used it for other things. Or you could just click and drag and drop your devices that you want to back up into here. It is a schedule, right? So you can run it at a schedule at a later time. But you can also back it up now if you're not familiar with that, which works great. Once you have your backup set up, you can just hit backup now and it's going to run, which is helpful because that's going to run in the background. So what I hear a lot of people complain about is the BACnet backups are a lot faster, so they don't want to do a BND backup. It's just, you know, you can run this in the background, you can work in Resource Manager, you can do some other things. I wouldn't, you know, if you're backing up a set of controllers or in my case like Network 201, I might want to work on something else while that backup is running because you don't want to make changes to the devices that are being backed up at that time, so you'll lose some of those changes. It's going to try 3. It'll have 2, the first initial attempt, and then 2 re-attempts, so 3 total. But it does give you, and it's kind of hard to see, but it will tell you the success or failure of the device. So that is kind of helpful. Afterwards, you just go into the status, and it will tell you where it's going, what devices it's on. And it does them in, I believe it's 5 devices, kind of simultaneously or concurrently. And you can kind of see that as you track through the last backup date or duration, and that's the column here. You'll notice that like as they finish, they're finishing in groups of 5. So, and if you're going out, you know, if you're on the job and even at lunch, if you've got half the building done, you know, instead of just dragging it over, you know, maybe run the scheduled one. And then it'll have a report for you to tell you, and then it's going to move on if it fails, and you know you can. So it's just helpful. So something if you're not using today, you might want to look at, or we have a lot of documentation on it. And again, if you're seeing issues, by all means, funnel that into tech support or myself, so we can start doing some investigation because it is a time savings feature, where you're not having to do that manually. So. Table views, you guys are probably using that a lot. Some things that are really helpful about it, adding the rows, saving the tables, customizing the default tables to your own. Everybody know that they're exportable to Excel. You can copy and paste from the table views to Excel, which is really helpful. And that's really easy to do, but just show you really quick. You're just going to select, all the cells you want, right-click, copy the selected to the clipboard, and then just open up Excel and paste it in. So just copy and paste from there. If you haven't done that before, it can be really helpful. How many of you are using some custom table views? You guys use custom table view a lot? I know that coming up here, we're going to start off a project for adding and expanding on some of our reporting and total control, and not specific to the Total Control web interface. It'll be for Design Studio. So adding some reporting inside of Design Studio, and that would be a good option for like assigning a user to a reporting widget, which would be like their home page. So, you know, yeah. No, I like that a lot. Good idea. All right. Firmware upgrades over the network. I put these in the slides. If you guys aren't using it today, it's just some good example of how to go through it. Who hasn't done a firmware upgrade over the network? Okay, a couple of you guys. The biggest thing to watch out for, and you can read through it in the slides here, but when you download from our website, you're going to get a zip file. And inside of that zip file is an executable. Inside of that executable is a zip file. So when you download to the controller, you have to use the zip file. But you get what I'm saying here, you got a couple of them. So the process is described here and it's in our documentation, but when you go to the website and when you go to the partner portal, you download that, it's unzipping it will give you the executable that you will launch that will self-extract the correct files into the right locations for the download. So I kind of cover that in the slides here as you look through them later after this. You're basically going through downloading to your local, unzipping it, hitting the executable, it's going to self-extract to the right location, and then when you're connected to the controller, upgrade the firmware, which is a right-click action, and then you're going to have to navigate down to the correct device model and then load that in. So that's I just describe it with some, you know, kind of circles and arrows there to, you know, help everybody that hasn't gone through that procedure go through it. So. Well, we have gotten a little bit more stable, even since I've been here for 2.5 years. I remember when I first started, there were like 2 or 3 net sensor firmware releases, like kind of, you know, in succession. And I feel for you guys. It's like, you know, that's a lot to go have to do and update. You know, it has throttled back quite a bit, I feel like, in the last 1.5 years, you know, that we haven't had as many releases. So hopefully we're moving in the right direction for y'all. Firmware upgrade over. Let me skip through some of these. How many of you guys are using the compare function? Have you done that before? What? Compare. So yeah, only in class. That was the perfect answer because yes, we show it in class for Connect, and then nobody really ever uses it again. But it's pretty simple feature, but it is pretty well hidden. So I'm going to grab from Resource Manager if I can find the right one. Thought I had a backup. I'll just grab anything here. All right, so if I'm going to grab this space temp AV, drag and drop it, I'm holding down the Shift key as I drop. Maybe. No. Well, you have to forgive me here because using my laptop, it's tough. Clicking too many buttons at once. Okay, well, I'm going to go back to the slides to show you. When you hold down the Shift key and drop something onto something else, it's going to run a compare, and then it's going to give you the table output of what the differences are. And you can do that on just a single object, groups of objects, or a whole device. So if you have a device that you deployed and you made a BND of, and then you want to do a quick little audit check to see if your BND and then the one that's out in Network Manager are the same or what's changed, just drag that BND, hold Shift, and drop it on top of the device, and it's going to give you the report to tell you what the differences are. Now, obviously, there's going to be some differences because we're going down to the property level, and present value will probably not be the same, right? So, you know, your temperature is going to have changed. But things like the object names and things like that, and we summarize those into rows for the objects, and then you can expand those down to see which individual properties on those objects have changed. So just a quick little thing that you can do. It's a table view, so again, you can save that. There's a save report. It's going to generate a CSV file, so it's something that if you're on a job and somebody changed something and you're being called out on it and you do that compare feature, and you can say like, hey, I took my BND on this date, this is what was live in the site, I can show you the difference, save the report, and, you know, kind of help the customer try to maybe figure out what had happened or anything like that. So, oh, well, audit is a whole other separate function, but it's similar in a sense. This doesn't have a revert. Audit would have like a revert, but auditing is inside of the application tools, and this is just holding the shift key essentially when you click and drag. Next time you boot up Connect and you're on a job, just give it a shot, you know, just for fun. Try it on just a couple objects instead of a whole device, I would say, to begin with, just because it's going to take longer. But yeah, it's taught in class, and then you don't use it much after that, but it can be really helpful. So thought I'd mention it. Application tools, which was a good segue, thank you, is separated down into basically 3 steps. You guys have probably done application deployment in the past and used some of the application tools, but the selection and configuration is done offline. You're building that in your job. And then deployment, you actually have to be connected to the site to do those downloads, of course. And then I put in here some of the information that we include in our standard applications that you get with the application tools, and then stepping through the process. Do you guys want to see that process, or do you want me to go on to some of the new features? Anybody? New features? Okay. If we have to come back, a lot of the slides, the stuff is in there, and we have a lot of documentation on the application selection, deployment, and all that stuff, so I'll let you guys review all that. I figured it would be good to get into some of the new features, so we'll keep moving. And then if we have time, we can come back to application deployment. So the Inocean Gateway, so some of the new stuff. Why don't you guys pass some of these around? Actually, I'll give you a... We'll do one at each row here. If you can pass back that way, and then pass those around and see if you can get around. Have you guys used the Inocean? Anybody used it for Inocean wireless? A what? Inocean? That's the technology connection. So it's the wireless technology. So Zigbee, Z-Wave, you're familiar with those type of wireless technologies? So,
first time I'm here, and I'm Ocean.
Oh. It's not all about you, trust me. It's not you. Yeah. So the Inocean technology is a little bit different than some other, it's energy harvesting, so you'll notice the photocell on the front of the sensor, so they're self-charging. They're going to charge an internal cap that's going to power itself, so it can be in a dark area for some time without actually, you know, and it's going to still get updates. It's an interesting technology and a little bit different in the sense that the receiver over here, because it's basically like a blank net sensor cover is what it looks like. And those sensors communicate inbound to the gateway. So the gateway never initiates contact to the sensors. It's just sitting there listening. There's a couple different messages that come out of those sensors. There's going to be a data telegram, and then there's going to be a learn telegram. So, and when we configure some of these, I'll show you here in just a second what the differences on those are. But those sensors are falling asleep when they're not being used, right? So they wake up and they basically ask, has anything changed enough that I need to send out a data telegram? And if the answer is no, it does nothing. It just sits on the wall. And then, so it's checking the sensor, and then for temperature, it's 1/2 degree. Change needs to happen before it will issue the data telegram out. And then I think it's like 15 units on the potentiometer, so it's a 0 to 255 scale on that potentiometer, and if it changes, I think by like 15 or something, then it will send out the data telegram. So,
how many devices per gateway?
You can have 16 sensors. Yep. Per gateway. You can also use the gateway to the distribution board and have 8 of the gateways to a controller.
Or the wake-up calls, does the sensor call the gateway, or the gateway sends a signal to wake up to the sensor after configured?
The gateway is always listening. The sensor wakes up and sends it to here. So, yeah, the gateway is actually powered through the controller. So I didn't mention that. Right, and correct. Yep. Mm-hmm. There'll be some cases if you're in an all LED lit room where you can't harvest anything from those LEDs. So it won't, I mean, maybe there'll be an external window or something that will let some daylight in that can charge it. But, you know, in some situations you might have to deploy or put in a battery to, you know, back that up. So we have quite a bit of documentation about installing the Enotion, like laying out and designing for it. We also have some videos online as well about how we've deployed it in our offices. Eric did a good video about setting up our larger cafeteria area and like planning where he was going to put the gateways and, you know, the sensors themselves to communicate well. So.
The gateway, do they create the mesh? Enotion's a mesh network, isn't it?
Not really. You can deploy a repeater to kind of create, it wouldn't be a mesh, but it will give you more signal, more distance.
There's assigned linear.
Yeah,
Right? So
100, yeah.
To that gateway, that's it. If that gateway dies, then I'm going to lose those.
You know, you could take them to a separate gateway, sure.
Like a backup or
Yeah.
secondary.
You just have to deploy another gateway. So you could have your distribution board and you could have 2 gateways on a really long room, you know, one on each side, and you'll pick up the sensors and say in the middle, those sensors in the middle could actually be mapped to both gateways.
Okay, so
So.
that's how you.
Yeah. So if one gateway were to die, you know, you might lose some of them. So let's see what else talk about here for the Enotion gateway. In the software, how you're going to deploy that is underneath the sensor port objects. You're used to seeing the net sensor, the digital sensor. We've added a right-click option to convert it to an Enotion gateway. Then once you've converted, you're going to start hearing from your sensors, and they're going to appear in the gateway sensor list. Thank you, sir. Dan Kokinda, everybody. Round of applause. So the sensors will start to appear inside of the sensor list, and then you can add them to your gateway. So I figured we'll do a quick little demo on one. 93.
50, 60 foot levels?
It's 100 feet is the 100 linear feet is the range, and I feel like that's pretty forgiving. I have some set up in my basement that are going 75 feet through 3 drywall partitions, and I'm still getting pretty decent signal on all of them. So.
Do you have isolation in the drywall?
Yep, on one room. I don't know, the other walls were built before I moved in, so I'm not sure about those.
That was always an issue with the Zigbee stuff.
I found that the ones that I had issues with, believe it or not, were the ones that were going through my furnace. So if it was not line of sight, if I was pictured where I was looking at the sensor over there, the one that was behind my furnace was the one I was having issues with. So yeah, it seems like metal is the biggest struggle, is my opinion of it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the planning guide about where you should mount the gateways and, you know, the sensors themselves and when to use a repeater and everything like that.
What about gateway to controller? What's the distance on that?
Hardwired, I guess.
Yeah, hardwire. Same as the net sensor. I think it's like, what is it, 100 feet? 75? Yeah, it's the same voltage. It's like the 3 volts or whatever it is. But so it's got the same restriction there. So.
I got mine in my basement. I got 2 sensors up on the next floor up, and they're working fine.
Okay, show you mapping one of these in here really quick. On the back of the sensor, I'm not sure, did you guys see the little button that was in there? I should have told you to look for that, sorry. On the back side of the sensor, when you pull that off the wall, so on the temperature sub board right there, there's a little learn button. You push that, actually it's called teach in a Notion, but you push that button and that's going to send out a learn or teach telegram and bring it into, and then the receiver's listening for that. So if you watch my sensor list here, just hit that one, refresh, and you see my icon changed, and now it knows the EEP. So the EEP is the Enotion profile, Enotion something profile. Can't remember what the other one is. But that defines what type of sensor it is. Now we've kind of taken the A5025 profile for that sensor. So I put a little icon to kind of let you guys know what it is in our hardware-wise, which is STW6010. There's a lot of Enotion sensors. We support most of the Enotion sensors that are out there. We haven't really validated them all because we haven't bought them all and got them in-house, but they should just work fine. We're taking right off of their Alliance profile, the Enotion Alliance profile, and mapping in the right properties that are defined in those profiles. So for instance, this sensor, if we want to add it to the gateway, we have two options. You can click and drag and drop it down into the sensor mapping grid, or you can right-click on it and add the sensor to the gateway. Once you've added the sensor to the gateway, make a little bit of room here, it's going to show you what properties are available on that. So this one that I hit is a temperature only. So I only have a temperature property. Some of these other ones that I've mapped in before, temperature, temperature and humidity, temperature and potentiometer for set point adjust. So those are the three that we offer today. To map that into the controller, you can click on the temperature slot here and use the drop down, or you can simply go find your analog value that you want in your controller. I'll do 99 and just click and drag and drop it in there. The RSSI is the signal strength, and the last update is the last time we've heard an update from the sensor itself. So if I scroll back up to here where you can see some of those, the signal strength and the second sense last receive. So if you look at those two things, you could map those into your controllers and AVs and kind of look to see how it's been running and making sure it's getting updates and it's got a valid signal. Because this one might have a great signal, and it does. It's green, which we color code these a little bit based on the Enotion standard to let you know. So green is good, yellow is, or orange I think is the other one, it's not so good, and red is bad. So if you start to see around like, it's actually negative, but I put them all in positive so it's easier to see here for color. And so if it's around neg 90, you're getting to the point where it's bad. Don't, and it will have it in red for you guys when you see it. But you might have one that's really good, sitting right next to the gateway. Now, if I take this and walk outside with it, the last time this gateway's heard from it was, 5-10 minutes ago, but it was perfect signal. So you can't just trend or rely on the signal strength to see if it's working properly, right? So you have to look at both of those items to see if it's been working and reading properly.
Is there any power indicator? I didn't see anything, so.
No.
If you're getting into a situation,
Low battery.
Yeah.
and a low battery or need power or anything, they don't, that's currently not good. That's an unknown.
Yeah.
What happened? Because
Yeah, no, there's not really a battery feedback or anything like that. There's nothing supported in that in the Enotion profile for the devices that we use that we profiled.
would be the key, right?
What's that?
The last update, that kind of be what you have to tie to.
Yep, the last update is a good one to look at, especially once it's mapped in, because you probably have it in a good spot. The only time, your signal strength is going to change greatly is if somebody, mounted it, if you mounted it on a counter and then somebody puts a coffee pot right in front of it or something like that, that might, that's going to change, but in most cases, you're going to maintain the same signal strength. So, right, and it's a good question. So it's half a degree change, so it could update very frequently. If it hasn't changed in 15 minutes, which, 15 minutes, it's like, can't remember what it is in seconds, but figure out the seconds. 900, is that what it is? So if it hasn't changed in that long, it's going to send an update. So when it wakes up, it's going to check the sensors and the timer, and if any one of those have met the threshold, it sends out the telegram message. So you should have, you wouldn't want to set it, I wouldn't set it for like one failure. I might take that and say like, okay, well, I want 3 misses or something before I say that sensor's, yeah, something like that. So, okay, so the Enocean Gateway we launched last year, that was released. This release coming up within the next month or so of Connect, what we've added was the data processing. So we have 2 columns over here. So if you guys get back to your offices and you look at your Enocean stuff and you order one, you're not going to see offset multiplier right now or table. So what we've done there, everything in Enocean, the profiles are in Celsius. So when you brought in an Enocean sensor before, you had to take Control Basic and say get AV10 and then convert it, basically in Control Basic to Fahrenheit so that you could use it. So what we've done is we've added some files on the controller, and we're doing some data processing against that feedback value as it comes in, the raw value, so that you can map it out to your AVs as Fahrenheit, which would be good. Another thing you could do is like the input. You could use an input table if you wanted to scale this. So if you wanted to do like -5 +5 for set point offset, you could build that into a table and then have that applied to your 0 to 255, so that you don't have to do that through Control Basic or something like that. So we've added that functionality in the upcoming release, and that will require when that happens, which, like I said, about a month, 2 out, when that's released, you will have to do a firmware upgrade to the controller, because we've had to add new files to support that data processing. So, but you won't need to update the net sensor because it's a gateway. The only difference for the upgrade? Yeah, we've added that data processing ability. So it can be applied to any of the properties that you have. So humidity, which I don't know, why you'd want to apply something to. That one is 0 to 100, so it's pretty straightforward. But temperature, you could apply it to any of the Enocean devices that you have. It doesn't have to be our Enocean devices. It can be anything that's coming back. We're just allowing for that data to be processed before it's written out to your AVs. So, any questions on Enocean before next up is, I think we're moving after this. So, anything else on Enocean?
How's the supply of that hardware? You run it,
Software guy. I don't know. I'm sure it's subject to, the direction of the wind today. I don't know what determines hardware availability nowadays. It's crazy. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with that. I know you guys do, and I feel for you. It's one thing I don't have to worry about unless it's me trying to order something off of online or whatever. But hopefully that really starts to get better soon. So, okay, moving on. Some of the new features that we've added. code editor, we've done quite a few changes. I put some in the slide, but I'd rather just show you so you can look back at this later and kind of review some of the details on the changes, because I'm going to show you some changes here. So I'll go to this 9301 and make some room for you guys. Okay. In the last release, we've had quite a few feedback. You had said something about wind control, right? You used to be wind control. All right. We had a lot of issues or a lot of feedback that said wind control was really easy because it would switch between the name, description, and the label. And you could just, it just switched, and it would find it, and it was easy to change. And like with Control Basic, you have everything as the mnemonic or it's the name, and it was confusing to some people to just see it all in mnemonic. We did add a name mnemonic toggle, so if you're looking through the code here, you see the AV21. If I hit this name mnemonic toggle, now that's all in name instead of the mnemonic. So that went through the whole code editor, and if I pull up the object or the output window here, which is helpful, it told me it converted 321 occurrences of object references from mnemonics to names. Recognize it has not changed what's in the controller yet, right? So it read in from the controller, the Control Basic program. I'm viewing it. I converted it. It is not changed in the controller yet. So. Correct. Yep. And so if you want that to be in the controller, you're going to have to save it back down. Why that's important? In the Conquest controllers, you're storing the raw source code that you enter into Control Basic. That is different than legacy BACnet devices and KMD devices. When you're doing KMC or KMD and legacy BACnet devices like the 7302, 5802, 5801, whatever it was, those are on an older compiler style, and when we read in, they're always stored in mnemonic. And when you read it into Connect, you actually have to choose how you want to view it, and that is done here in Tools and Options, and it's this, yeah, and right here, and it's Compile with Object Names. So if you want to view your code on a 7302 in name, you have to have that checked. And what happens is when we read in from the device, from the 7302 into the software, we see AV1 and we decompile it and we basically parse and put in the name right then. So does that make sense to everybody? So it's a little bit different. But with that, couple things I want to show you about that name mnemonic switching. If you're just troubleshooting and you just don't understand this section and it's all written in mnemonic, you can highlight it and we can switch just that section. So you see in the output window down below, we changed 31 occurrences instead of 321. So now we're looking at it in just mnemonic, or we could change that to just name, and you can kind of maybe read through it. Maybe it's going to help you understand, some naming. If they had forgot to put in, REM statements, it might help it easier, or maybe make it easier. That functionality is only supported on Conquest devices. We can't do it on Legacy and KMD because, again, it's all one file, right? So if you I don't have a 7302 here on this network, but if you go like this on a 7302 and highlight, that whole name mnemonic button just gets grayed out, so you can't do it. Now you can switch the whole thing, but as soon as you start to select the code within, it's not going to let you switch it back and forth, okay? Nice other thing, I'm going to hit Control-Z, undo, and I just undid my change. So Control-Z is supported to go back. Why that kind of matters is maybe you made a bunch of code changes already and you typed in 15 lines of code and you went to convert something and you're like, crap, I didn't mean to do that. You don't have to worry about what you clicked and hit the name mnemonic button. You can hit Control-Z to undo, edit, undo, well, which is up here too, by the way. I should mention edit, undo, if you want to do that instead.
So another cool feature in the link
Right.
Because when you troubleshoot, sometimes by line things, why did output didn't make? You just simply
Yeah.
click on it and pop that,
Yeah.
whatever input, output value, and you to see it and compare it.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. But
I like that idea. I can show you a couple things that we've done, which were in the last release that are also helpful. If you go to Options, and now I'm in Code Editor, if I go to Fonts and Colors, I'm going to change my code element type. We've added object reference to here, and I'm going to make that bold and italic, and I'm going to change the foreground color. And let me move this a little bit out of the way so you can see it happen live. Apply. If you look, see what happened to my code and behind it. So now all of my object references are styled differently, so they're easier to find. So
I still can't see the line.
we're getting there. If we toggle in live values, you can hover over it, and it will give that 0 is the value. It kind of looks a little, looks a little silly there, but it's if you toggle in live values and hover over it, maybe we got something on wall sense or anything? No. But yes, we're given the mnemonic, colon, the name, value, last read time inside of the tooltip. Right. And then if live values is not enabled, we've also added to just the hover over here. It used to be just the mnemonic, and now we've added the colon with the object name. So if you're programming, that's especially helpful if you're in, all in mnemonic. So let me get this all back to mnemonic. If you just don't want to have to go look in your AVs to know what AV21 was, if you hover over it for a second, it's going to tell you its relative humidity. So as you're going through your code, oh, what was BV6? Oh, it's motion. Okay, that makes sense. Here it's, Gene has done a nice job of commenting that out, or commenting it up to let you know what's BV6 is, but, those comments might not be there.
That's in the new release?
Yes.
In a month or so?
No, this is there now, actually. Yep, the code editor stuff is in there now, so if you use the latest, it will be, the latest release version, it will be in there. So, yep.
So Brad, one thing though, that now, I'm running that version now on one line, the value is smashed against the last paragraph.
I know. I've asked. Yeah, I'm putting 3 spaces in there. I thought about doing a dash, but I worried. I did the dash, and then I said, and then you get a negative, and you're like, what is the negative? So I ended up putting 3 spaces in there. But that one we changed in the next release. Yeah, we launched this in the last release. We also found a couple little issues with some of the decompiling. For instance, if you have your supply air temp, and you want to abbreviate it, it's going to be SAT, right? I mean, it should be DAT, industry standard, but but somebody might want SAT. Unfortunately, if we look in the IntelliSense, SAT is a keyword. So there are some issues with using name mnemonic switching. I mean, I don't know why you would named an object called if, but if you did, no pun intended, it won't know how to highlight it, right? It doesn't know that it's an object because it's named if. So we're correcting some of those little bugs, and so it was launched in the last release. We got to do a couple things to make it a little bit more robust. If you guys start using it, give me your feedback. We're only supporting on-panel points right now for the next feature, which is what I'm going to show you. I forgot I hadn't showed you yet, but which is drag and drop. So if I click and drag this into the editor screen, I brought in AV1. So as you're typing in your code, that can be helpful, but you can only do this on panel, right? So only the objects that are from that device. Probably in a future release, it would be helpful if we supported off panel, but there's a lot of stuff that goes around that and what we need to do, and we're not doing that right now. Another thing about the drag and drop, I'm going to hold the Alt key. I'm going to try with my keyboard here while I drop. Yes, it did it. Okay. See what happened there? I held the Alt key. It inserted the name versus the mnemonic. So as you're typing, as you're writing your code, if you want to drag and drop an object in, hold down the Alt key, and it's going to bring it in as the name. If you just hold down, or if you don't hold that down, it's going to bring it in with the mnemonic. So let me do that again. 35. Alt key, drag, drop. Okay. Now, if you want to change some of your code, now I have 4 references to AV1 here. I'm going to grab AV2. I'm going to click and drag and drop it right on here. So see how it highlighted? Let go, and it's going to replace. I'm going to edit undo that, right? So Control Z. I'm going to do that again. Now this time I'm going to hold the Control key down when I drop it on there. Do you want to replace all instances of AV1 space temperature? It's going to replace both, by the way, with AV2, question mark, yes. We replaced 10 occurrences. We see that down in our output window. Probably not what we wanted, because I just wanted to mess around with these 4 here, and there's other places in the code. I Control Z, I'm going to edit undo it, right? So it's not what I wanted to have happen. So that's a good spot where you can do the edit undo. It's exactly what it is. It's a good replacement for find and replace. You guys have probably done that in Notepad++, dumped everything in there. The problem is when you change BV1, and there's BV11 out there, when you keyword in off of BV1, it's going to change the first 3 characters of BV11 to something that you didn't want it to change to. Ours is looking up the object references, so we're getting the position in the code of where those object references exist, and we're changing just those. So it's going to change, even if it says BV1 and that's motion, or BV6 was motion, it doesn't care if it's in the program as motion or BV6, it's going to change it, which a Notepad would not know that. It's just going to change. You'd have to do 2 search and replaces there. So really handy feature. One more thing about that feature. This is going to be like Twister with my hands here, but if I click and drag, I'm going to hold Control and Alt and drop all at the same time, and it's going to basically tell me the same thing, but I am going to replace it now with the name. Remember, because Alt drops in with the name, not holding Alt is the mnemonic, so now I'm going to replace all those instances with the name reference instead of the mnemonic reference. Yeah, but I like to talk to people, so you can call me anytime and I'll remind. We do have quite a bit of it updated in the documentation. Like I said, I've also done, I think, 3 videos specifically on just this. So there's the quick 2-minute, 3-minute videos out there if you want to see it in action. But yes, it's all in the documentation on KMC Connect documentation as well. That's all been updated, and it was in the last release. So as we make changes to this, we'll keep updating that documentation as well. Any questions on that? How much more time do I have? You guys know? Oh, we're running into lunch. You guys don't even need lunch. You're going to want to stay in here. You're not even going to want to go. All right. Talked about the code editor, name mnemonic switching, partial code versus full code, compile, all that stuff. So you guys can look through the slide deck and get a little bit more detail there. Object locate, I describe it here in the slide. I'm going to show it to you live. We were looking at the Inocean Gateway earlier, remember? On this form. Well, I'm not. Now I'm looking at AVs, and I don't know where I am and what controller I was looking at. But I do have my form open still. It's in my active window over here. There's a button called Locate. If I click the Locate button, it's going to scroll my network manager and highlight my Inocean Gateway, which is my active view of the form. You guys see that? So the binary value object's on a totally different device. This is on a FlexStat. Click Locate, and it's going to be right there. So thank you. I'll bow. Yeah, it's a huge time savings feature, and as you're programming and you got a bunch of devices open and you're dropping stuff into code and you're, I hate it, you drop something, and it's like, oh crap, that was the wrong device. That's a good feature request.
Because it has to be the other day,
Yeah.
right? I knew I had a program somewhere where I controlled this AD.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what AD it was. I just didn't know which program it was in. So now
Yeah.
I have to open all 10 programs and go look and go to live. So the fastest way I do it is go to live values, look at the live values, see if
Yeah.
it's over there, highlight it or hover over it, and it tells you what line it's in the code.
Oh.
That's the fastest way I knew how to go find that AD.
Yeah. That's I would grab a card and email me that. And any of those ideas, really, as you guys have them, make sure you grab my card before you go. Email me some of those ideas. I'd love to make it easier and faster for you guys to work with, especially if there's something you're struggling with every single day. You know, I'd rather do what we can to build it into the software for you guys.
Brad, if you could, at the end of your thing, you could give me 2 minutes. I got something I want to talk to you in class about while we got all this people.
Okay. I'll try to. I'll move as fast as I can. Any questions? Any questions on object locate? So that's.
Resource Manager as well?
Oh, I wish it did. So it does. Yes, it does. It also works in Site Explorer. So it supports all the active windows, and thank you for reminding me. So if I open up this active cooling set point over here, and let me navigate my resource manager away from it. So now if I click locate, my resource manager scrolled to the right location. I thought about making the panel like flash at you, but after a month, you guys would tell me to take that away. So yeah, I was like, I'm not even going to do it. I don't want to hear from them in a month saying, why do you flash that thing at me? Good thing to look at, though, is if you look at the tab, preceding the tab, there's the RM for Resource Manager, NM for Network Manager. And as you get into Total Control, you're going to see another one, which is the Site Explorer, SE. And then you're also going to have another one to distinguish that it's a graphical page. So Graphical Designer, GD. So you're going to actually see for like graphic pages and Total Control, you'll see 4. It'll say GD/SE or GD/RM because you can launch diagram files from Resource Manager or from Site Explorer. So those preceding, characters here inside of your tab are basically telling you kind of what panel to look for your synchronization. So, but thank you for reminding me about that. Anything else on object locate? There's some videos online about it, and if you want to go watch those for the YouTube stuff, I cover pretty much those items that we just covered, but if anybody else you want to share it with in your business, have them go check it out. Also, some of the graphical stuff that I talked about for the tabs in there in the presentation as well. Okay, let's just skip FlexStat. You guys don't care about that, right? Well, we're going to come back to it, but I did want to show you a couple other little things before we get into the FlexStat. In the upcoming release, when you go to, we are supporting Remember for remote licensing. Anybody use remote licensing for your keys? We support soft keys with Connect and Total Control. We didn't in Win Control, but Total Control, we support a soft key conversion. Same thing with Connect. If you're deploying it on the site, you can convert that to a soft key. But you can also map into another licensing services that's remote. Basically, when you launch and it gives you the prompt to type in your IP address, there's a remember. You just check the box to remember the IP address or name, and then it will remember it the next time, and then you just have to click OK. You'll still be prompted, but you just have to click OK. It's going to remember the IP address for you. And if you go into Tools and Options in either Total Control or Connect, if you go to Current General Application, Remote License, and that's where you can enter that information in and save it, and then it will store it for your application. Or you can just follow the procedure that you normally would for remote licensing and check the box. So that's going to be added. The other thing you guys can expect to see coming up, I just wanted to show you guys so you weren't surprise when it comes along is the loops. We've completely redesigned the loop form itself. So what you're going to see in the loop changes, they're all now in loop configuration. So before they were on 2 separate chevrons, you had to kind of bounce between for minimum, maximum output, and bias was somewhere else. And so we've separated that down, grouped them together, so you have the controlled variable, set point, manipulated output reference, all your constants for your loops are together, your loop settings are all together, everything's all on that one form. It should be easier for you guys. I think it will be, but if you're still struggling with something, again, let me know that feedback. We got feedback on the loop form, said it's really confusing. We took it, we tried to change it. Hopefully, there's no way to get to the old form, so if you loved it, I'm sorry. It's gone. But please give me your feedback on this as you start to see it and start to use it. If we need to make some modifications and throw some things, we'll gladly do it. One other thing that's coming along with loops, we added the live trend view. So if you right-click on a loop object, go to new live trend, it's going to launch a live trend for you, and it's going to pull in the 3, so your set point, your control variable, your present value, which is your output, and if you have it mapped into a manipulated reference, so if you're manipulating an analog value, by default when you launch that, you will see that in there as well, so all 4 of them. So if you're tuning a loop and setting it up, the intention here is, set it up, right-click, start your live trend, go back to your other tab where you're configuring your loop, make some subtle changes, go back to your live trend, let's check to see that your loop is tuning. So you can just launch it without having to create that yourself. You could always create that before, but you don't have to, since we don't have the ability to save, now you can just do it here. So, one more quick thing is the CAN I/O modules. This is just a little helpful usability thing for you guys. Let me find my device. I don't have a CAN module here, but I can show you one in Resource Manager. Inputs. So I have AI 45, which is on a CAN module. Anybody know what CAN module that is? AI 45? It's a quiz. I don't have any gift cards, by the way, so if you get it right, you still don't get anything. I don't know what input it is either, but I know it's an input. I don't know if it's on a 5901, 5902 for the CAN, but is it? Let's just check and see. If I hover over that point, it is input 3 on a 5902 address 1. You're right. So now if you just hover over in Resource Manager or Network Manager, it's going to tell you what CAN module it's on, what module type it is, what address. Same thing for the outputs. Also, if I go double click and look at that form, if I look at the General tab down at the bottom, it's going to tell me what module, address, and input or output that it's located on. So just helpful for you guys. Okay. We got everything on there, so let's go back to talk about FlexStat. Let me make sure. Okay, so there are quite a few different model number breakdowns that I described here. There's 2 basic different models of FlexStat. And there's the 3.6 and the 6.3. So that's the number of analog outputs and digital outputs. So they're just reversed. One's an air handler base where you have more analog outputs. The other one is more of a rooftop, heat pump, 2-pipe, 4-point, fan coil type situation. So, and then here's the model number breakdown to give you some information about that. This is an MSTP version. We also support it in Ethernet as well. The stuff you'll want to probably see and know about here, if you look at the screen, is the set points, or the breakdown on what describes the screen. So you got rotation, 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 and those are the rotations that you can put 8 objects in, and you can set a cycle time, just like that you're probably familiar with the net sensor, is that it's going to cycle through that at a given time, and the number of objects you put in there. So we have some configuration things I'm going to show you in the software for those rotations. The zone temperature, the top rotation, you could probably put that in for like 3 or 4 things, but I think you know, you guys would probably leave that as space temperature most of the time and not add a lot of stuff to that rotation, but it does support rotations. Down below that is the icon buttons. I'm going to go through all those, how those are set up. And then there's the footer down below, title. Any questions on the kind of the screen layout? How that all set up? All right. What you can expect to see inside the software, we're going to see a new folder called Display Objects. You're going to see a UI1 element underneath there. That's the element, or that's the object that just controls the screen, right? So it's just programming this screen. Everything else on this is a conquest controller, just like a normal conquest controller. So the only thing that's added really is this display objects. You're going to do everything else the same as you would on other devices. And as you go through that, I have this presentation for you guys so that you can go reference back, but I wanted to go look at one live for you guys since I got this one here. And we'll just go through and set some things up. Okay, so display objects. Double click. Now, reading in this file is going to take some time. Hopefully we can get it down a little bit faster. It's MSTP too, which makes it even slower. But to pull in, also as you make some changes, there are some changes like screen brightness. You don't have to reset the device. It's going to just change the brightness for you. But there's other objects on here. As you make changes, you have to reinitialize the device in order for them to take effect. So just be aware that, you know, when you're making changes with that. The title, if you want to, like here I got device name, device location, device description, or you can just do custom, and then it's just, you can type in whatever custom title you want. But if you want to templatize it, and you say I put all my device locations as room 102, room 104, and that's what you want to show, and you don't want to have to type that in every time, then you're just going to pick, you know, device location, and it's going to animate, grab that property off the device and force it into the title up on the top. So it just makes it a little bit easier to profile and do templates with. We support a few different color schemes for the display itself. There's a UI lockout where you can lock out the icon buttons down at the bottom, the set points. There's inactivity screens, which is the inactivity screen is when this isn't being touched. It's in it right now. It just shows the temperature. Everything else is gone. You can also just completely blank out the screen. You can just dim it down, or you can do nothing. Different screen blanking options, and then you can set the inactivity time before that happens. 2 levels of password, which you guys are probably pretty familiar with. And then time formatting for the footer down below, and whether or not you want to show the date and time, time only, just the date, or nothing. So this form, as you step through the different tabs, this is where you're going to lay out the rotations. To lay out a rotation, let me add some. Just grab whatever you want into the rotation, drag and drop into the different rotations. It's going to default to the display name to pick up the name of the object, which you can override this. It doesn't have to be. So cool. And so you can just type in, put a new display name label that will go underneath there. And the synchronization for the 2 bottom rotations. Like I said, I don't see you. You can set the cycle time on the top rotation. You probably won't ever have multiple objects, but if you do, you can set that. We do allow for the bottom 2, which will probably be changed more often, to synchronize, so that you don't want one that's set at 7 and one like 25, and they're just kind of flipping around all the time and they're not in sync. So just check the box to synchronize them, and then you just have to change one rotation value and they'll just cycle together so that they're not like musical chairs or whatever down there. Icon buttons. I have a good example set up here, and if you want to see a little bit more in detail about how that works, stop by the demo area and we can walk through it in a little bit more detail. But right now, I just want to talk about the different setup here. We support two different types. There's an adjustment and a special. The only thing that's in special right now is the FC toggle, which will toggle the display from Fahrenheit to Celsius. The icon object is what drives the little icon. The caption object is what drives the text underneath the icon. The animate is whether or not the little flame or snowflake is animating. The adjustment object is what is acted upon when you press the screen. And then the adjustment priority is when you act on that screen, at what priority level do you want to write at? So it will come pre-configured with 3 icon buttons automatically. You can add, it can hold up to 4. You can take some away. As you make adjustments, you can clear everything that's in there. And you can also leave them configured. So if I have this one configured and I just don't want to show it for a certain customer, you can just unclick it, save it, reinitialize the device, and then that icon button won't be there. So if you want to maintain one standard and just hide certain buttons, you can do that. You can also lock that out so that the customers can't use it by the lockout, UI lockout on the first screen. Set points are in the upper left-hand side or upper right-hand side. I have the dual set point. It supports single set point with some code modifications, but if you select set point and then toggle out the second set point, then you would just assign your objects there for your set point, for your single set point, and put in your minimum and maximum. And it will change the little status bar color next to it. By default, they're red, and blue for heating and cooling, and it will turn it to like I think it's gray if it's just a single set point, so it doesn't have a, association with heat or cool. Advanced in the menus is all the stuff that you're used to seeing inside of the net sensor. We'll pre-configure these, but again, all you need to do is drag and drop them into the grid. Well, that did a replace, but your screen was a little bit bigger to work with. You could just drag and drop it in there to set up all your system configuration for access through the settings on the device. Also accessing the settings on the device if you want to hide some of the navigation that's accessed through the settings menu. We allow you to hide it here by unchecking the box. For system communication, there's a few more that we need to add to this. It's schedule, date, everything you can access on the device touchscreen. If you don't want the customer accessing that, uncheck it here. They will never see it even with level 2 password. So that was all really fast, but I wanted to get through it all, and I knew we didn't have a lot of time. So if you want to see anything more on Ocean or anything Connect or anything that I covered today, I'll be moving this over to the demo room, and I'll probably be in there the rest of the day just hanging out. So please feel free to stop by, talk to me. And that is it for me. And we got comments from people? What? Sorry. Oh, it's 19XXX36 or 63. I can go back to the slide here for you. Any other? Oh.
Question, I guess, more than anything. So, Connect and Converge.
Mm-hmm.
You the same guy for Converge that runs in the trading world.
Mm-hmm.
So, is that bringing that forward as Connect gains strength?
Yes.
We've got some pushback from our field guys that are like, I don't use Converge, but we leave it there to meet the spec. But it would be really nice to have pretty close to what you just showed us.
Yep.
Available on the platform when our service guys or anybody else comes out.
Yeah, ideally I'd love to launch it where when we add a new feature like the object locate, stuff like that, where it's immediately available in Converge. There are some stuff that is not even available in Converge today that you can do in Connect, like firmware upgrades over the network. I'd love to be able to do that through Converge, and we will be able to eventually. I'll make it happen. I would like to get to the point where when we're adding some new features that they're being added in Connect, and then the next release they're added in Converge, so that we can make some changes, learn from it. We can control that release of software quite a bit better. So we'll make some of those changes, and then if it's really useful and everybody's using it, we'll get that moved over to Converge. I don't know how long it's going to take us to get there, but we're going to get there. Any other questions, guys? Good. Please come see me in the demo area if you want anything more. I know I had to rush through everything, so I want to give you guys as much time as possible. So come find me if you have questions.